Hello, this is Brookes. You're listening to Brookes' voice now, and I'm joined today on this chilly, cold January day with my friend Laura.
Hello.
And just so everyone knows, I have always known her by her last name, which is Nedbal. Is that okay if I say that?
Of
No,
course.
you're outed.
You doxed me.
You're doxed. Her mother's maiden name is... Just kidding. And her social security number is...
Yeah.
I've always called her Nedbal. So if I call her Nedbal, don't be confused. Her name is Laura. And Nedbal is not a bad word or a curse word. It's just her last name.
That's it.
Amazingly. And I'm so excited. She's here visiting from California.
And I barely read, so this is a real treat.
You
read this book.
How many books a year do you read?
Oh, God. Under 5,
Really?
I think. Probably.
Oh, wow. So this is a big deal.
Yeah.
Well, we're here today to discuss Pulitzer Prize winning book, Less, by Andrew Sean Greer, which you recommended to me.
It was a true delight.
Yes. You recommended it to me, and then I got it from a used bookstore, and I read it a few weeks ago. And when did you read it?
I read it, let's see, it was, I think, over the summer. It's been a while. So I apologize if I'm not up to snuff on a lot of the things that have happened in this book, because it's been a while since I read it.
That's okay. We'll remember. And we have the book in front of us if we need to reference. So also this book is recommended by my very favorite author, Ann Patchett. On the cover, It says, I recommend it with my whole heart, Ann Patchett. And I will read anything Ann Patchett. I'll do anything Ann Patchett tells me to do. Read anything she writes. I'll read anything she tells me to read. So that for me, also after your recommendation, of course.
Yes.
And this book did win the Pulitzer Prize in 2018. So has been, I think, kind of on my radar. That's a big award, but I just had never gotten around to it.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you told me to.
Yeah. It was an easy read.
Yeah.
It was like a really fun read.
Yes, a fun read. I think I described it as a whimsical romp.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I definitely cried at the end, but we'll get there.
Oh. Yeah, 261 pages. Yeah, it reads really quickly. If you Google it, Google describes it as a satirical comedy novel, which I guess is fine.
Yeah.
I guess they're calling it satire because it's sort of like lambasting the publishing world.
Right.
Which is funny because it's a Pulitzer Prize. Then it won the Pulitzer Prize, which actually a character in the book also wins the Pulitzer Prize for poetry, and he's like shocked by it, and they kind of make fun of it. So I wonder if he saw that coming.
Yeah.
When he wrote this.
Is this the book where they tell you how to pronounce Pulitzer?
Yes.
Okay, because I have heard
it's
it
not
both.
Pulitzer, it's Pulitzer. Yeah. They kind of make fun of it.
Love that.
So we'll do a quick plot rundown for those of you who haven't read the book or haven't read it in a while. And then we'll get into discussing it, and there will probably be spoilers down the line. So just to warn you, I don't want you to be blindsided by the spoilers if you're planning to read this and you want to go into it without knowing what happens. But this is a book about a character named Arthur Less, who is a gay man from San Francisco.
Yes.
Who's turning 50 and is a little bit brokenhearted. His longtime kind of lover, they were never like really official, is getting married to someone else, and he feels like he can't go to the wedding, but he also can't really decline the invitation because that would be weird. So he decides instead to put together this sort of like whirlwind trip around the world that's like kind of for work. So he cobbles together all these like writing related invitations he's received, and then he just like leaves town.
Yes.
So that he has a really good excuse to not go to the wedding, which I strongly identify with.
Yeah. Oh, I felt myself a lot in this book.
Yeah.
Like broke but still traveling when you know you shouldn't be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Spending your last dime on plane tickets.
Worried about not if your suit gets ripped and you don't have anything to wear.
Yeah. I know. Well, the scene where he's like packing for like 6 different climates in one like carry-on, I identify with that.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I'm gonna drink water. Do you want to fill us in on his travels?
Yes. So he picks up. Well, I guess we should preface this by saying that his actual love of his life was a famous poet. So a lot of the things that Arthur is able to do or gets invited to do is because they want him to speak about Robert.
Yeah.
And he was part of the Russian River School of Poetry or something like that.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And when like all these famous writers and poets were there, so they want him to like regale.
He's presented as sort of like a Hemingway-esque
kind
of character who like was who came to publicity alongside all these other famous writers, and they all knew each other.
Yes. So the first stop is New York City.
Yeah.
And that was to do an interview with someone named H. Mandern.
Yes. I mean, for some reason, dresses like an astronaut.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, and I think this is the theme of the book is like, sort of like expectations not meeting reality.
Yeah.
And like what to expect when you go and do a weird thing like this. Because the guy he's interviewing ends up like having food poisoning and everyone's late and like it's just never what you think it's going to be. So he goes to NYC. Then after that he goes to Mexico City for a conference. Then he goes to Turin for a book award that he's been nominated for one of his books that was translated into Italian. Then he goes to Berlin where he guest lectures as an adjunct professor for like 8 weeks and has a love affair.
Well, and he like thinks he can speak German, but then
right. And I
really
loved
can't.
those sections where we should read some of those because that is a really fun like game that the book plays where he's like attempting to speak German but like doing it badly.
Yes.
And everyone's around him's telling him like, man, your German's terrible. And he's just like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
Then he goes to Morocco where he's going to turn 50 and he joins this like fancy trip of another friend or a friend of a friend who's also turning 50. And then he goes to India for what he thinks is going to be a writer's retreat, but that kind of doesn't pan out either. And then his last stop is Japan, where he's going to write an article about, oh my gosh, how do we say this? Kaiseki, which is a Japanese like dinner service.
Yes.
And he's going to write that for a travel magazine. And then he's going to go home and I'm sure he thinks like he will be transformed by his travels. And when he goes home, his ex-boyfriend will be married and he'll get on with his life and all will be well.
Yes.
And that was kind of the idea. Do we leave anything out that's very important? His ex-lover's name is Freddie. And he was adopted by his gay uncle Carlos. And Carlos and Arthur have always had like a rivalry. Yes, that's a good point.
And yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you didn't listen to this on audiobook. You read it.
I read it.
Yeah, I did too. So my first question is always yes or no. Did you like the book?
Here's a little thing I'm going to tell you about me.
What?
I won't finish the book if I don't like it.
Ooh, really?
Yeah.
Oh my God, you're so brave.
So many books that I just put down and I'm like, I can't do this. So I liked it.
Wow. It is so rare that I don't finish a book.
That's crazy to me.
I just feel guilty.
Really?
Yeah.
Let's unpack that.
I'm trying to get... Yeah. Tell me how that makes you feel. I'm trying to get over it because I agree. There's too many good books out there to like waste your time slogging through one you're not enjoying.
Yeah, and I also, like I said, barely read. So I feel like if I'm actually going to read, I want it to be something that I'm enjoying.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's fair. What are the major themes of this book, would you say?
I, first and foremost, love gay literature.
Oh.
But I...
Wait, give us an example. What's another book you recommend? Do you have one that falls in that category?
Well, I loved Call Me By Your Name.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't read that. I mean, I watched it.
Yeah. But I think that... I guess I shouldn't just pigeonhole it as gay literature because it's just... There's so many things that it's just love.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
Everybody goes... Like, I resonated with a lot of stuff in this book.
Would you say this book is a love story? Is it a romance book?
I mean, there's definitely... Yeah. Yeah, the whole point of the book is that he's trying to, like... He's, like, too heartbroken. And I think that he had so many walls up, and he kept saying that, like he never really even gave Freddie a chance because he felt like he was too old for him.
Yeah.
And
they had like a 10-year age difference or something, or maybe more than that.
More, I think.
15 years.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it was very apparent that he, like, loved him and didn't want to see him with anybody else, but he also felt like he didn't deserve it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of stuff in this book he like felt like he didn't deserve a lot.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about like being around genius, but not being a genius yourself.
Right.
Which, I don't know, the word genius, I think there's a bunch of definitions for that probably, or it might just have to do with IQ only. But I think what it's saying is that like he is less talented than all of his contemporaries, or he thinks that he is. Oh my gosh, did you hear my stomach growl?
No.
That was so loud.
Oh.
I hope it wasn't on the podcast.
I highly doubt it. I didn't even hear it, and I'm sitting next to you.
Yeah, but I mean, as someone who, I don't know, maybe you feel this way too, but I have a lot of friends who are like comedians and talented actors and writers, and I think that's a feeling you can identify with of like, everyone else around me is so good at this, and like, I'm an imposter.
Not even that. When you watch people be successful, and that is then confused with being great or being genius. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's all relative. Like and when he goes to these other countries and they, like in Italy, and they love him for his book, he like doesn't want to accept it.
Yeah. He's like really suspicious of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because here's a spoiler. He wins that award.
Yeah.
And he can't believe it because he knows a couple of the other authors and he holds them in high regard and thinks they're really like geniuses.
Yeah.
And then he wins.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which there's some imposter syndrome, right? For sure. Of like, I don't deserve to be doing this. This isn't really I think you get that with a lot of like dream professions.
Yeah.
Like,
and he was in love with a very successful writer, and I think he probably felt like, am I getting some of these opportunities only because of him?
Right.
And it's not really because of me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the conference he's invited to speak at in Mexico City is about Robert.
Yeah.
And he's invited there just because of his proximity to him, which would be really weird.
Yeah.
Especially because Robert's alive.
Right.
He's still alive. They just are no longer together.
Yeah.
So that's kind of weird. Some other themes that I wrote down are aging.
Yeah.
He's turning 50. He's very frightened of that. Mm-hmm. And I think in general, he seems to be resistant to the idea of like kind of growing up.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah,
accepting
definitely.
like what that means for his relationships in his life.
He had a lot of like Peter Pan syndrome.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah,
Peter Pan syndrome.
Very immature.
Yeah. He's like gallivanting around the world, like falling in love with everyone he meets.
And like very unstable.
Yeah.
He's just very unstable, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd like to think, I'm sure this is like one of those things. Like when I was 16, I was like, when I'm 30, this and this and this will be true. And now I'm 30 and it's like, well, none of those things. Yeah, like that's not what it's like.
Yeah.
But I do hope that as you age, you become like more stable. I mean, maybe not financially, but just emotionally, and like you can deal with
yourself,
like these life events that are thrown your way.
Yeah.
Better.
Yeah.
Than when you were young.
Totally.
But maybe not.
We'll find out.
We will. I mean, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
I said self-acceptance, fear. I think he has a lot of fear. He's really, I think, afraid. Like, I think he's afraid of acknowledging his own feelings about Freddie and, like, what would happen if I told Freddie really how I feel. Would he leave anyway?
Yeah.
So it's easier to just let him go or push him away. Fear of, like, that he's not going to be good enough.
Yeah. Well, we talked about this off pod.
Oh, off pod.
But
bring it on pod.
Yeah, so we're bringing it on pod. But yeah, a lot of this book, what was funny to me is, and what I loved about it is that you obviously, when you're reading a book, and the narrator is the main character, or sorry, well, spoiler alert, it's not. Anyways,
yeah, it's a third person narrator.
Yes,
and you don't know who it is,
right,
until the end.
But they're writing it from Arthur's perspective at the beginning, and you just accept everything for what it is. And then when towards the end of the book, you find out that like all these things that he thought in his brain, like relationships and how they were it was opposite for the other person.
Yeah.
And I think like he was very closed-minded and only saw things from his perspective, and he didn't even think to look at it from any other perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I think that also comes from like fear and anxiety. You know that thing of like where you think everyone's talking about you and they're not.
Right.
But it's hard to like see. Yeah, it's hard to see that side of it.
Yeah.
When you're in your own head.
Mm-hmm.
I am, in general, fatigued always of books that are about books, or TV shows that are about TV shows,
Yeah.
or movies that are about movies.
Yeah.
Because I just
It
feel
seems
like
lazy.
it's so lazy.
Yeah.
You really can't look around you and find anything else to write about or to portray or whatever. And so I tend to kind of boycott at this point stories about stories, because I just think, like, first of all, we need more diversity in our writing rooms, and we need more diversity in our authors, and we need more diverse voices telling more interesting and diverse stories. And if you're at a point where you only know other writers,
Yeah.
you only know other comedians, you only know other people in TV, and that's all you can look around and write about, like, you need to get out of your bubble.
Yeah.
That said, of course, there are amazing... 30 Rock is an amazing example of a
Right.
show that I love, but it is about a TV show.
Yeah.
It's set in 30 Rockefeller Plaza. So it's kind of masturbatory. And this book is obviously about an author
Yeah.
who wrote a book.
But what I liked about it is that he was at once successful and he's not anymore. And so it was like his struggles. And I felt like they actually did a good job of making it seem like being an author was just his job.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't defining, and he was trying to figure out what to do. And also there was like this love story, and I felt like it's not like he was trying to find his next, obviously he's trying to write a book, but it wasn't like solely focused on like,
Yeah, it wasn't.
I gotta find out what my next book's gonna be.
Yeah.
It was like, I just want to get away from this wedding that's happening because I don't want to be there.
Yeah, it was more about his adventures and his relationships
Yeah.
and his neuroses.
Yes. Very neurotic.
He could have had, I mean, I think you could sort of inserted any job. He could have been a scientist.
Yeah.
He could have been, I don't know, I can't think of any other jobs right now.
Yeah.
But, like, he could have kind of done anything that, like, might take you to conferences.
Right.
So that's fair. Yeah, I mean, this book totally worked for me. I also really liked it. I don't know if I said
Oh, yeah,
that.
I didn't even,
don't know if
I
said
didn't
that.
ask you.
I really liked it.
Yeah.
I thought it was delightful. But, yeah, so it totally worked for me, but I'm just always hesitant because there's just more interesting stories to read.
Yeah.
But, yeah, this book was great. So, okay. I love to talk about first sentences, so let me read it to you now. Once I turn the page, here it is.
Here it is.
From where I sit, the story of Arthur Less is not so bad.
I love it.
Which is kind of the thesis of the whole book.
I know.
We come back to that at the end.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you were saying too, of like, you get in your own head so much, you can't see, you have no perspective left.
Yeah.
On like what your life is really like.
Yeah.
He thinks he has this horrible life, but everyone else is like, dude, you've got it made in the shade. Like,
Right.
you're a writer, you're traveling internationally. Like, yeah, I mean, not everyone's life is good all the time, but it's still pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And it takes him, it takes him all this time to sort of look around and realize, like, maybe that's true.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not so bad, this life I live. And I think that's probably true for a lot of us. Like,
Totally.
you can't see the forest through the trees
Oh, yeah.
every day.
It's not apples to apples, but like, when you like think you're fat and then 3 years later you see a picture and you're
Yes.
like, oh my God, I like looked great. What was I
wish I looked like that now.
Yeah. Thinking about like a lot of things for him, I think hindsight, when he starts to unpack things and learn about it, it's not at all what he thought of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, well, plug. Arthur Less should be in therapy.
Oh, yeah.
Big
Absolutely.
time. He's got some stuff to work through.
Oh, 100%.
He is not coping in a healthy way.
No.
So what were your initial impressions? So the first sentence we get is, from where I sit, the story of Arthur Less is not so bad. Which I think tells me, like, okay, well, this is a story about this one guy, Arthur Less, so he's going to be our hero. And, it sounds like maybe he's kind of fallen on rough times, but he's not doing too badly.
Yeah.
Then it goes on to say, look at him, seated primly in the hotel lobby's plush round sofa, blue suit and white shirt, legs knee crossed so that one polished loafer hangs free of its heel, the pose of a young man. So we already are hearing, like, he's not aging gracefully,
Yeah.
kind of, So we know he's wearing a suit. He's in a fancy lobby of a fancy hotel. He has a polished loafer. So we think like, well, he's well dressed. He's probably got some money. He's in this hotel. Like, we don't know what he's doing there. But like, I think this is all describing like from the outside, like a life that is good.
Yeah.
A good life. So I guess, I don't know. It's probably hard to remember. You read this
No,
a while ago.
it's really hard. It is, because I know obviously what happens in the book, and I know that he's not polished. But I liked how quirky he was.
Yeah.
And unapologetically,
Yeah.
like he was pretty self-aware about a lot of his neuroses, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
And very...
Well, and I think that was part of why he pushed Freddie away.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm too weird for you.
Right.
Like, I'm too this, I'm too that. I need this to, yeah. I think he was pretty self-aware.
And he obviously was materialistic also because, his
He
suit.
shops for suits a few times.
Exactly.
In the book.
And he was like, I have to have
bespoke custom suits.
Yes, and it has to be a certain color because it's like his brand. I think he thought he had this brand. But yeah, it is hard to remember what my first thought was. Like, I don't think I went into the book knowing whether or not I was going to like him as a character.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I knew we weren't going to hate him.
Yeah.
Probably, but that's probably just because, like, it's hard to hate the main character.
Right.
Most of the time. Like, you probably won't like the book if that's true. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, he's sort of a bumbling fool.
Yes. Yeah. A klutz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you just want to be like, oh, honey.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then, like, wipe the mustard off his lapel.
And, like, take care of him.
Yeah.
I know.
That is the instinct. So he goes to Berlin, and he's an adjunct professor there, and he's teaching a class called, what's it called? It's something about vampires.
Oh, I don't remember.
Oh, the purpose of the class, which actually sounds pretty cool. The purpose of the class, I think, it's like zombies and vampires, like historical literature or something. And the idea of the premise of the class is that you take all this famous writing and you like tear it apart and rewrite it.
Oh, yeah.
Or like you put it together. So it's like the Frankenstein idea, which I think sounds really fun. And it talks about like he brings in like sentences cut out on pieces of paper and you cut the words apart and then you make new sentences out of famous like quotes.
Yeah.
And then you write new like intros to really famous books, like which sounds kind of fun, and like that would be a fun class. And it says the students like love the class. They like have a great time. Oh yeah, and in this section, okay, well let's just skip to the next question, which is which trip that he goes on is your favorite?
Oh gosh, that's so hard. I think I really liked the Morocco trip.
Oh yeah.
I had a lot of secondhand anxiety for him when he was on all of his work trips because none of them, he didn't feel qualified and he was nervous about it, and like you could feel that as the reader.
Yeah.
So I just had like a lot of anxiety reading some of the things he was going through. So when it got to the Morocco trip, I was like,
oh, he's gonna hang
he's
out.
like just having fun.
Yeah.
And it was just like a hilarious trip. Everyone kept getting sick. Well, and that's coming up, another question, but like people keep getting sick on all these trips that he's going on.
Yeah.
It's very weird.
I know. What is that about?
I don't think they ever addressed it. The only like joke he made was when he was in Berlin. Is that when he read at that nightclub?
Yes.
And everyone like fainted or something.
Yeah, they just all start fainting.
And then he was
like several of his students in his class faint.
Yeah.
They never addressed that.
I think all they said was that he made a joke like, oh, I bored them to death.
Yeah, there's some kind of like fever sickness going around that everyone's getting where you're like really sick for 24 hours. Because his like TA gets it and is like, he gets a lover in Berlin named Bastian,
I think.
Who's like tall and dark and like handsome, and they have this like 8-week like love affair, which I kind of liked, but also thought was like so frivolous. Like he literally falls in love every city he goes to.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's awesome,
right?
Like I hope your 50s is that cool.
But it was a very similar relationship to what they told us his relationship with Freddie was like.
Yes.
Like I felt like it was like a step in Freddie.
Yeah. definitely. Like, it was like, this is not going to be serious. Like, you can't be that into me.
Yeah.
This is, like, fun only. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It was frivolous.
But I think that the Berlin trip is my favorite because it's, like, so funny. Oh, yeah! And there's this line where it says, Bastian's like, do you know what my friends call you? And he says, Mr. Professor. And he says, no, they call you Peter Pan.
Yes.
Like, Peter Pan's like, he doesn't want to grow up. He wants to wear these suits. He wants to frolic around the world, like, falling in love.
Yeah.
Or he thinks that's what he wants, I
right.
guess. But also, he's bad at speaking German, and it's really well written.
Yes.
I wish I could find an example of it. Oh, well, here's one. So he comes into his class and he says, I am your Mr. Professor. And then it says, he is not. Unaware of the enormous difference between the German professor and docent, the former being a rank achieved only through decades of internment in the academic prison, the latter a mere parolee.
Oh,
Les has given himself a promotion. Then he says, and now I am sorry. I must kill most of you.
I loved
Oh,
that.
yeah. 6 greetings, class. I am Arthur Less. Like, he's just almost doing it.
Yeah.
But, like, not quite. And it's really sweet.
Yeah.
And again, like, he's just kind of a bumbling fool.
Yeah.
But he's so sweet that you, like, nobody can be mad about it. He says, oh, yeah. Bastian says, you know, your German is pretty terrible. And he says, not true. It is not perfect. But it is excited.
It is excited.
Excited?
But, like, I also, that's me when I'm in France and I'm, like,
right.
trying to speak the French I learned in high school and college.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
Of course. If we're trying to speak a language we haven't, like, used in a long
right.
time. I mean, but I don't think you would accept a
no
teaching position in the language.
Absolutely not.
Like, you would know better than to do that.
Right.
It's very presumptuous of him.
Yeah.
To think, like, yeah, I can teach an 8-week class in German.
Right.
Sure. Last time I spoke it, I don't know, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But I've got it down. Like, that's kind of a lot.
Yeah.
Also, though, it seems to go well. Like,
yeah.
The students like the class. He, like, has this hot fling.
Everything always works out for him. He's
yeah.
very lucky.
He is very lucky.
Yes. So, I guess we can kind of just I guess maybe it's worth doing a quick synopsis of each trip, though. Do you want to do that?
I don't know if we have time for that.
Okay.
That's why I just wanted to talk about our faves.
Okay, cool.
Okay, well, tell us what happens in Morocco that you like. Do you want the book?
Oh, gosh. I'd have to reread a lot of it because it's been a while, but I just remember really liking that trip. I thought it actually reminded me of, like, our friend group, how we travel and stuff, because they were just, like, partying. Everybody wanted to, like, just get really drunk at night. And then the next day, like, everyone's hungover, and some of them can't do the trip the next day's excursions, and the other ones, like, rally.
Yeah.
So I just thought it was a lot of fun, and I've always wanted to go to Morocco, so it was, like,
awesome.
cool to see what they were doing, and then they get stuck
in a sandstorm.
In that sandstorm.
Yeah,
and
they go out in the desert and they stay in they glamp.
Yes.
They glamp in the desert, and there's a sandstorm, so they can't go out of their tents and they can't leave.
Yeah.
And they can't do any of the stuff that was, like, planned for them.
Yes. And then they go to that, it's a bar, I think, right?
Yeah, they, like,
and that's where he turns 50.
Make him drive. They make their, like, driver take them to, like, the nearest town, basically, and he does. And then they just get drunk in this bar, and they're like, "Woo, we're turning 50." Because the other woman he's with is also turning 50. But I like that too. I mean, again, it's sort of like expectations versus reality.
Yeah.
Like, and I do that with birthdays too. I, like, build them up and worry about them, and then, like, if things don't go according to plan, it's, like, upsetting.
Right.
But he handles it pretty well, I think.
He does.
In the book.
And I think he was just happy to not be alone. Like, wasn't it the bartender who, like, everybody else goes to sleep?
I think it's their tour guide.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And then they have, like, a glass of champagne.
Yeah.
And
they
toast.
Like, sit and toast.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's, like, ends up kind of being alone, but it seems fine. He does all right with it.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Yeah, I mean, I have that urge to, like, travel around my birthday.
Oh, yeah.
Too.
Mm-hmm. Well, my birthday's on Memorial Day weekend, so it's always, like,
oh, yeah,
a fun, long weekend. Mm-hmm. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had some good birthday trips.
We have.
New York last year, Palm Springs the year before that.
Yeah. 30th was in Palm Springs.
Yeah. Oh, wait, Omaha. We were in Omaha for your birthday last year.
Yeah, for a wedding.
Shout out to Maggie.
Yeah.
I'll know if you listen to this.
True.
Maggie
and Ben.
M and B. Oh, did you have a favorite character?
My favorite character... I don't think I did, actually.
Yeah. I liked Zora a lot.
Yeah.
The birthday character.
Yeah, I really liked her. I thought she was like... I liked how welcoming she was.
Yeah.
She didn't care. She was like, let's just have fun.
Yeah, she's like, let's hang out. Oh, but then on that trip, he finds out that Zora's getting a divorce.
Yeah.
And so is his friend Lewis.
Oh, yeah.
He finds out, like, all of their relationships are, like, not what he thought they were.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, like, kind of a crazy twist, I guess.
Which I liked that because I agree, and that happens to me all the time. I mean, also in this, like, world of Instagram where you think everybody's lives are, like, so perfect, and then you hear what people are going through, and you're like, awesome. We're all in the same boat. So I like that because I think he thinks that everything's supposed to be, like, picture perfect.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think he feels like a failure.
Yeah.
He feels like, well, I couldn't succeed in any of my relationships. Like, my books weren't that popular. Like, the best thing about me is that I knew Robert Bradburn.
Right. Which is sad.
Yeah.
That he, like, defines himself by his ex.
Yeah. Although it sounds like they have a good relationship.
Yes. Oh, man, that ending, it really got me. It was so sweet.
It was so sweet. I don't know if we should talk about it. I don't know. I'm always on the fence about, like, how spoilery to be on these. I think we should just do it.
Okay.
Let's talk about the end.
Let's do it. So, earlier in the book, when he was in Mexico City, they, at the last minute, told him that they were in... Okay, well, actually, let me back up. A little bit further. So, they went years and years ago when Arthur was in a friend group with Carlos. They all went to a trip to Mexico or something. I think it was down in Mexico. And that's where he met Robert. And Robert and his wife were on the beach.
Yeah.
And...
I think it was just in San Francisco.
Oh, was it in San Francisco?
I think so. Yeah, because he goes on the trip to Mexico with Robert.
Oh,
later.
Got it.
They go on this, like, illicit escape while he's still married.
That's right. Yes. And steals Robert away from his wife.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then...
Although that's not a fair description. Robert is a grown-ass man who can make his own choices.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't think he was, like, siren-songing him. Like,
no,
they fell in love.
I think he feels like he ruined that marriage, and he was like, she's gonna hate, like, she hates me.
Yeah, the wife. Marianne, I think?
Oh, I don't remember.
Is her name?
And then when he's in Mexico City and he's, like, speaking at that thing,
Marion.
Yeah. They, at the last minute, tell him, like, oh, and by the way, Marion Brownburn is coming. And then he has, like, a panic. But then she ends up not showing up. And I think he was, like, afraid of her. Yeah.
Yeah, he feels guilty about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, at the end of the book, he goes back. Finally, after Japan, he is scheduled to go home. And Robert is, like, not doing well. He's just aging and...
No, he had a stroke.
Oh, he had a stroke. That's right.
Yeah.
And, yeah, you should be telling this. I can't even remember a lot of the details.
Well, I'm looking at it now, too. But, yeah, so while Arthur's in Japan, and he's like, going around and he's eating the same foods, like, 4 times in one day. Because he's doing all those... How do you say it?
Kaiseki.
Thank you. And he comes back to the hotel, and he has a message... which reads, inside is a piece of paper with a message in all caps, which reads like an old-fashioned telegram. Arthur, do not worry, but Robert has had a stroke back home now. Please call me when you can. Marion. So Marion gets in touch when Robert gets sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's like, you deserve to see him as much as I do because, you know...
Like, we both loved him.
We both loved him. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was very interesting that here... Arthur is thinking that, like, this is his great love, But Marion's the one that stepped in to take care of Robert. Mm-hmm. And that was something that I think Arthur wasn't willing to do.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he was capable of it.
Oh, yeah. There's that section about, like, how he's, like, a bad caretaker.
Yeah.
And Robert always complained about that.
Uh-huh.
Like, he would just leave.
Yeah.
And, like, wouldn't help him if
right.
he was sick.
Yes. So there was he was learning a lot about himself. But they have, like, a really, really lovely conversation.
They, like, video chat. Wait, what are you talking about?
Him and Robert have, like, they video chat. And yes. They have this, like, lovely conversation about love and life and their time together. Mm-hmm. And it was, like, so sweet.
Yeah, it's sort of like bygones be bygones.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that kind of, well, I mean, we're not old enough to have experienced, like, what this book describes, but I feel like I've gotten some of that with, like, just, like, high school friendships or, like, middle school friendships or, like, you know, if you didn't get along in middle school and it feels kind of weird to you and you can't even really remember why, but you just know, like, oh, weren't on good terms. But then you run into them or you see them and they're so nice.
Yeah.
And they're so nice to you and you realize, like, oh, this has not been their experience.
Yeah.
Like,
mm-hmm. Like, I built this
I've
all
been
up.
carrying this in my head this whole time.
Yeah.
Right. Or maybe people are just good at forgiving eventually.
Yeah, and I think, you know, he had a brush with death, so it's like, let's not worry about this. Like, let's just love each other, and what we had together was great when we had it, and let's, like, cherish that. And I thought that was really great. Mm-hmm. And then after this, like, obviously I knew it was coming, but, you know, Freddie comes back.
Freddie comes back!
And to be honest,
you knew it was coming.
But I didn't know. I didn't know if I wanted it.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of wanted Arthur to, like, have to really
Oh my
learn
God.
hard.
It was... okay, yes. Okay, I'm glad we're talking about this. I feel like it was a similar thing to Sex and the City where she ends up with Big.
Yes.
And you're, like, you're happy.
Uh-huh.
Like, you're like, okay. But you're also kind of like, fuck that.
Yeah.
Like, why?
You just went through all this. You learned so much about yourself. And
Go
then,
be you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that they really did love each other, and so I'm glad that I'm glad that they ended up together in the end.
Yeah, I mean, they did. Yeah, I think that they did love each other, and I think they both went on these journeys. That's what it took for them to realize it.
Yeah.
But I mean, the same could be said for Carrie and Big, which I'm just like,
yeah,
I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you wraps the story up in a pretty little bow,
right.
But, like, yeah, I agree. I saw it coming too, but I also was kind of like, maybe he doesn't need this.
Yeah.
Maybe he doesn't. I mean, he's got game, Arthur
right.
West. Shit, he'd go anywhere in the world and, like, pick up some hotties. Like,
yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, how long were they, like, together?
I think
together,
it was
it was like 9 years or something.
Yeah.
It was a long time.
It was like a good amount of time.
I mean, I guess you don't spend that long with people. Ooh, you know what we should talk about is his friend Lewis, who invites him on the trip to Morocco.
Yeah.
And he has this relationship that Arthur thinks is amazing. Mm-hmm. And it's like...
Oh my God, yes,
yeah.
Yes. And they were like, I only want to spend...
10 years.
10 years together.
Yeah.
And on the 10th anniversary, like, we're gonna part ways. And then the first time the 10th anniversary comes up, they were like, I'm not ready for this yet. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
Like, we're gonna do this in another 10 years. And then he decides, let's part ways while it's good. I loved that. I forgot about that.
What do you think of that approach to relationships?
I don't think I would be strong enough to do that. But I thought it was kind of, like, romantic. Like, let's end on a high note, and I don't know if it's actually realistic. Like, I don't know if anyone could do that in real life, but I don't know. I kind of liked the thought process.
Putting an expiration date on your relationship.
Well, I think you kind of forget about it, probably.
He didn't.
Yeah, true.
He, like, calls him back. Let me see. I'm at this section. Oh, it starts with, he says, Arthur says, "Happy anniversary, Lewis. Thank you. Clark and I are divorcing." Les sits straight up on his cushion. What? Yeah. So he says, "I'll live with you, but only for 10 years. After 10 years, I'll leave you." He says, "After 10 years, I'll leave you." And I said, "Oh, 10 years? That seems like plenty." And that was all we ever talked about it. And then he forgets about it. Lewis forgets about it. But then after 10 years, he said, "Let's take a trip to New York." So we went to New York. I'd forgotten all about the deal, really. Things were going so well. We were very happy together. We had a hotel in Soho above a Chinese lamp store, and he said, let's go to the art bar. So we took a taxi, we went to the back room, we had a drink, and he said, well, the 10 years are up, Lewis. Like, this guy didn't forget.
Yeah.
He remembered.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Oh, I thought they reached one mark and then decided to keep going.
No, he does, but
okay.
he remembers him. So he brings him back to the bar where they initially had the conversation. He says, it's been 10 years. And then he says the 10 years are up. And I said, are you fucking serious? Are you leaving me, Clark? And he said, no, he wanted to stay. And then Arthur says, thank God for that. And Lewis says, for 10 more years. And he says, that's crazy, Lewis. It's like a timer. So then they stay together for 10 more years. And then a few months ago, we were in New York, and he said, let's go to the art bar. And he says, it's been 10 years. What do you think? We sat there for a long time drinking, and I said, honey, I think it's time.
Oh.
And he said, I think so too. And we hugged there on the cushions in the back of the art bar.
What I will say is, I think that some relationships go on longer than they need to simply because you don't want to be alone. Mm-hmm. So I think if they reached a point in their relationship where they were like, you know what, I'm ready for something new, then it's a very like healthy way of looking at it. Like, let's end amicably.
Yeah. Well, it's conscious uncoupling.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yeah. But
essentially,
if they're still in love and they're just going to end it, then that's dumb.
Yeah. How do you know the difference?
Well, they both obviously came to the same conclusion.
Yeah. Well, and he says, like, Clark is getting married again to someone else,
mm-hmm.
which seems abrupt.
Yeah, that seems... Timeline's a little shaky there, Clark.
Interesting, Clark. Well, also, I mean, they don't have kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like people stay together so often, like, for the kids.
Right.
They don't want to break up a family.
Right.
Which I understand.
But, yeah, if you think that a relationship has... I guess if you see it as a checkpoint, you're, like, checking in at 10 years. It's like, do we want to keep doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Then...
I know, that takes a lot of, like, emotional strength.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't think
like
I could do it.
that's the harder choice.
Yeah,
totally. The easier choice is to stay together.
Right. If you've built this life, you have this house.
Yeah.
Whatever. But I also think, like, if you were to do it that way, divorces would probably be less messy because you're not mad at the other person. You're just like, let's go our separate ways, still love each other.
I know, but how often are breakups like on equal footing? Like, usually it's one person wanting it more than the other person, and that's what causes so much conflict.
Yeah.
I think. Did you watch Marriage Story?
Yeah.
Ugh, I can't watch it.
It was too theatrical for me.
Really?
Like, too choreographed. It was just like that really put me off. The way that, I don't know.
I just, as a child of divorce,
I
don't want to watch media about it.
Right.
It's like too real.
Triggering.
So my trigger word.
It's a trigger word.
I'm so triggered. That's a callback to an earlier conversation that you all were not a part of, listeners.
So it's probably really great to hear about it.
It's great. It's so funny, and I know you laughed. Anything else about this book?
My one question is, at what point did you know Freddie was the narrator?
I think I knew. There's that weird scene where he's with Carlos on that island.
Yeah.
They're like on a private island that they took a boat to, and I guess they sleep there. It's honestly not well described. And Carlos keeps being like, have you heard from Freddie?
Yeah.
Which happens throughout the book. Everyone's asking him, have you heard from Freddie? Have you heard from Freddie? So you know, like, something's up with Freddie. Mm-hmm. Something's up with Freddie, and something's up with Freddie's wedding, and, like, something went awry.
Yeah.
But Arthur, like, is just willfully ignorant to it, I guess.
Well, because the wedding went through.
Yeah.
Like, I think if the wedding didn't happen, then he probably would have found out sooner.
Right.
But the wedding happened, and they were on their honeymoon. And Freddie was like, I don't want to do this.
Oh, that scene, though.
Oh, my God.
The scene where they're on their honeymoon, and he starts to cry. Ugh. And his, like, new husband says, I really wish you weren't crying right now.
Oh, my God.
Like, imagine being on your honeymoon, and then your new husband's, like, crying.
Obviously in love with somebody else. Yeah. And the worst part about that is that he went his entire relationship with Freddie knowing that in the back of his mind.
Did he?
I think so. I think he always knew that Freddie probably wasn't 100% his.
Maybe. I don't know if people are that... Like, I feel like love is obvious to the people not in it.
Yeah.
But the people in it often can't see it.
Right.
Or acknowledge it themselves.
Yeah. Because you're so insecure or anxious
or
like,
afraid.
Yeah.
Like, self-preservation becomes more important than, like, being honest.
Right.
With yourself or with, the person you're in love with. I was trying to find that section where he's like, I really wish you weren't crying right now.
Oh, my God. It was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's so sad.
It was heartbreaking.
But I think that's probably why Arthur didn't find out sooner. Because I think, the wedding went through. And so.
Everyone assumed, like, oh, it's fine.
Right.
Yeah. I can't find that section.
I did like that they took that route, though. Because I was like, I swear to God, if he's walking down the aisle and he's like, I can't. I'm like, that's too much.
Too much. Too runaway bride.
Yeah, it was very, I guess, somewhat realistic this way.
Yeah. I hope to attend a wedding someday where there's a runaway bride. Not someone that I love and care about that much, but just like, an acquaintance whose wedding I'm at and then they don't show up. Like, how exciting would that be?
I know.
Wouldn't it be thrilling?
Yeah.
I do have respect for people who, like, call off engagements. It's the harder choice.
Yeah.
The easier choice is to just go with it and get married.
I can't.
At that point.
What is very triggering for me is always money stuff. So, like, this book it gave me a lot of anxiety because he, like, didn't have any money the entire time, whatever. But also with weddings, I'm always like, you just wasted so much money putting on that. Like, please call it off because it's so expensive to even attend most weddings as just a guest. Mm-hmm. And not to mention what you and your families are paying to put on the wedding. Mm-hmm. And then to just literally throw that all of that money away for nothing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Just because you're embarrassed.
Although a lot of times it's like non-refundable deposits and stuff.
But that's better than you haven't spent all the money on like the catering and everything at that point. There's like so much money that happens on the day of.
Yeah.
That if you would have just called it off even a week before, you would obviously some money would be gone. But there's so much money still that you spend the day of. It's like,
oh man. Well, let's talk about weddings and make it a whole other podcast.
Oh, man. Don't even get me started.
Don't even get me started. Yeah, well, okay. So Less by Andrew Sean Greer. Andrew Sean Greer, national bestseller, winner of the, we now know, Pulitzer Prize.
Yep.
And not Pulitzer. Don't say it like that. You'll sound like an asshole.
Yes.
We both liked it. It was a great read. Very cute. Well written. Very funny.
Yeah.
There were parts that I chuckled at.
Yeah.
I went back to read again.
LOL'd.
LOL'd. A little bit Eat, Pray, Love vibe for me.
Yeah.
But better.
Yeah. But I do think that that's how people deal with things these days. Traveling's so easy. So it's like, if you want to escape, you're going to escape to another country. So if I would have read this book 15 years ago, I would have been like, okay, whatever. But
this guy.
Yeah, but this is like realistic.
Seems real.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and especially because he gets his like flights covered and most of his hotels are covered.
Yeah.
Like he does it on a budget.
It was like a hodgepodge. Yeah. Trip that he just put together. Whereas Eat, Pray, Love was very.
Yeah. She's like,
find myself.
I'm tired of my Peloton and now I'm going to go to India.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Nedbal, it's been a true delight.
True delight. Just like
always.
the book.
You can listen to this in California in the sunshine after you leave us.
Can't wait.
If you get home, it's supposed to snow on Saturday.
I leave Sunday.
They say. Yeah, here. It's supposed to snow here.
Yes.
Saturday night.
Yeah.
So
I'll see some
maybe
snow.
you'll have to live here.
Oh gosh, don't say that.
I would love it. Okay, thank you for listening. We will be back. I'll be back next week. No, I'm not going to promise that. I don't know when I'll be back with a discussion of The Immortalists by Chloe Benjamin, which is our January book. Go and get it. It is about siblings who have their future read, and the psychic predicts the day they will each die and how that changes and impacts their lives. So it should be a good one. I haven't started it yet. The Immortalists by Chloe Benjamin. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Books with Brookes is in the Press Play Podcast Network, and our theme music is by Jonathan Allen.